Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons and love are told. Please make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this one. My name is Clarissa. I'm 32 years old and for most of my life, I have been the one everyone in my family could rely on. Some people would call it being dependable. I've come to realize it was more about being expected to sacrifice for others, especially for my younger brother Damon. He has always had this charm that seemed to win everyone over, and even when he made reckless decisions, our parents would step in to shield him from the consequences. Meanwhile, I was the one expected to hold everything together. From the time I was in college, I knew I wanted stability. While my friends were spending weekends shopping or going on trips, I was working extra hours at a coffee shop stacking away money. Every dollar I saved felt like a brick in the foundation of a future I desperately wanted. I learned how to live on very little, clipping coupons, cooking meals from scratch, and resisting every urge to splurge. There were nights when I sat in my small apartment, looking at my bank balance, and whispering to myself that one day it would all be worth it. My dream wasn't extravagant. I didn't care about fancy cars or luxury vacations. What I wanted was security, something my family never really had. My parents, Denise and Harold, had always struggled with money. They worked hard, but bad financial decisions kept them behind. I watched them borrow from relatives, rely on credit cards, and then fight endlessly about bills. It scared me, and I promised myself I would not repeat that cycle. So, after nearly a decade of discipline, I did something that felt like climbing a mountain. I bought a duplex. It wasn't just a home. It was my investment, my chance to create a steady stream of income that would keep me from living paycheck to paycheck. I wanted one unit for myself, and the other unit rented out so I could build equity while someone else essentially helped me pay the mortgage. It was the smartest decision I had ever made. But I didn't tell my family right away. Deep down, I knew exactly what would happen if I did. They would find a way to make Damon's problems my problems. He had recently lost yet another job this time because he couldn't stand his boss, and his wife Tasha had been calling my mother constantly, complaining about how hard things were for them and their 2 kids. I knew if my parents found out I had space in the duplex, they would immediately think of Damon. I told myself I would reveal it later, maybe after I already had tenants in the second unit. That way no one could interfere. But secrets have a way of slipping out. I don't know exactly how, but one afternoon when I stopped by my parents' house for Sunday dinner, my mother brought it up casually as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "So," she said, ladling soup into bowls, "your father and I were just talking. Damon and Tasha moving into your duplex makes perfect sense, doesn't it?" I froze with the spoon halfway to my mouth. "Excuse me." My father chimed in, his tone light but firm. "They need a place, sweetheart. You've got that second unit. Family should help family." The room tilted. I looked at Damon across the table. He was smirking slightly, as though this had already been decided. Tasha gave me a polite but expectant smile, her hand resting on Damon's. My parents were nodding as if all that was left was for me to say yes. My chest tightened. All those years of scrimping, working double shifts, and going without it was like they had erased it all with a single assumption. My duplex wasn't theirs to give away, and yet they were sitting there, plotting my sacrifice without even consulting me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask them why Damon's comfort always had to come before my effort. Instead, I set my spoon down and said carefully, "I haven't made any decisions about tenants yet." My mother frowned. "But they're your brother and sister-in-law. Who else would you rather have living there? Strangers?" I swallowed hard. "Maybe. Strangers who pay rent." The silence that followed was thick and sharp. Damon's face darkened, but he said nothing. My father shook his head slowly, as though I were being unreasonable. My mother sighed heavily, the way she always did when she wanted to remind me of my duty. That night, I drove home in a fog of anger. I stood in the empty second unit of my duplex, running my hands over the freshly painted walls, and I whispered, "This is mine. I earned this." Yet their voices echoed in my head, telling me I was selfish if I didn't give it up. I barely slept. For the first time I saw clearly the pattern of my life. Damon making mistakes and me cleaning them up by sacrificing my time, my energy, my money. And now they wanted me to sacrifice my future too. It was like being asked to hand over my lifeboat to someone who had already punctured theirs. The next morning I made a decision. I picked up the phone and called a property management company. I told them I wanted both units rented out, mine included. I could live with a friend temporarily while I figured out something else. But I would not let Damon's irresponsibility swallow the thing I had worked so hard to achieve. As I signed the paperwork, a rush of fear and exhilaration flooded me. I knew what was coming. The storm, the outrage, the accusations. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I had drawn a line in the sand. I looked at the duplex one last time before handing the keys to the manager, and I whispered, "No more sacrifices." When the property management company called to confirm that both units had been rented out, I felt a strange mix of triumph and dread. On one hand, I finally had professional support to shield me from my family's expectations. On the other hand, I knew the news would land like a bomb at the next family gathering. That dinner happened sooner than I expected. My mother invited me over the following Saturday, claiming she had made my favorite roasted chicken. I should have known it wasn't just about food. When I arrived, the atmosphere was charged. Damon and Tasha were already there, sitting stiffly on the couch. My father leaned against the mantel with his arms folded, and my mother bustled in from the kitchen with a forced smile. I barely had time to put down my purse before Damon snapped. "So you rented out the duplex to strangers? Without even telling us?" His words sliced through me, but I kept my voice steady. "It's my property. I made a decision that's best for me." Tasha's eyes narrowed. "Best for you? Do you realize we're about to be evicted? We were counting on that place, Clarissa." I bit my tongue before I said something cruel. They had never asked, they had just assumed. My father's voice boomed. "Family comes first. You know that. How could you do this to your own brother?" A hot wave of anger surged through me. "Do you hear yourselves? You never asked me. You sat there at dinner and planned my property like it was yours to give away. I have spent my whole life bailing Damon out, and now you want me to give him my future too?" "No." My mother gasped, clutching her chest as though I had stabbed her. "Selfish," she whispered. "I never thought I'd hear that word attached to you. Selfish." I laughed bitterly. "No, this is the first time in my life I'm not being selfish to you. This is the first time I've put myself first, and you don't know how to handle it." Damon jumped to his feet, his face red with fury. "You'd rather some strangers live in comfort while your niece and nephew are crammed into a one-bedroom? You're unbelievable." I stood too, shaking now, not from fear but from the intensity of finally speaking the truth. I worked for that duplex. Every dollar, every late night, every sacrifice, it was mine. If you wanted to give your kids a home, Damon, you should have planned for it. Don't make your irresponsibility my burden. The room fell silent except for my mother's soft sobs. I grabbed my purse and walked out before they could throw more guilt my way. My legs trembled as I got into my car, but my chest felt strangely light. For the first time, I had stood my ground. What followed was silence. Days turned into weeks with no calls from my parents. Damon blocked me on social media, and Tasha sent one venomous text before cutting off contact completely. At night, guilt gnawed at me, whispering that maybe I had gone too far. I replayed my mother's disappointed face over and over, until I cried myself to sleep. But in the middle of that loneliness, something else bloomed: relief. For once, I didn't have to carry anyone else's problems. I went out with a close friend, Marisol, who listened patiently as I poured everything out. She leaned across the table and said, "Clarissa, you didn't do anything wrong. You set a boundary. That's healthy. Don't let them convince you otherwise." Her words were like water on parched soil. Still, it wasn't easy. Holidays came, and I wasn't invited. My parents hosted dinners without me, posting smiling photos with Damon and his kids online. I scrolled through them in the quiet of my apartment, a lump forming in my throat. Meanwhile, the duplex tenants settled in. Every month, the rent checks arrived without fail. Each deposit into my account was a small reminder that I had made the right decision, no matter how lonely it felt. Months slipped by in this new normal until one morning, an envelope arrived in my mailbox. The handwriting was unmistakably my mother's. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter, not long but filled with words I never expected to hear. Clarissa, we were wrong to assume. We have leaned on you too much and we failed to see how unfair it was. I'm sorry. I hope we can find a way to repair what has been broken. Love, Mom. I sank onto the couch, tears spilling down my cheeks. It wasn't a full apology, but it was a crack in the wall they had built between us. I clutched the letter to my chest, unsure if I was ready to forgive, but grateful that maybe, just maybe, they had begun to understand. The silence between us wasn't over, but it had shifted. And I knew that for the first time, I held the power to decide how much of myself I was willing to give. The letter from my mother sat on my coffee table for days, before I could bring myself to answer. Every time I passed it, I felt a pull in two directions. Part of me wanted to forgive and rush back into their arms, while the other part remembered all the years of sacrifice and silence that had left me feeling invisible. Eventually, I drafted a reply, not out of obligation but because I wanted clarity. I wrote, I love you, Mom. But I need you to understand that I cannot keep living my life as though Damon's needs matter more than mine. I deserve respect, not just responsibility. I sealed the envelope and mailed it, and for the first time, I felt no dread about their reaction. I knew where I stood. Weeks later, my mother called. Her voice cracked as she said, Thank you for writing back. I didn't realize how much we had been asking of you, Clarissa. It wasn't fair. The humility in her tone stunned me. My mother, who had always carried herself as though family came before anything else, was finally admitting that her version of family meant I carried most of the weight. My heart softened. We spoke for nearly an hour, and though it wasn't a complete healing, it was a start. Meanwhile, Damon and Tasha were forced to find a smaller two-bedroom apartment in a less polished part of town. At first, they resented me openly. Damon wouldn't speak to me directly, but I heard through my mother that he had finally started working consistently. He took a job at a warehouse, and while it wasn't glamorous, it was steady. For the first time, he was paying his own bills without leaning on me or our parents. Months rolled into a full year, and little by little, the tension began to ease. On my 33rd birthday, I hosted a quiet dinner with a few friends. To my surprise, Damon showed up with Tasha and their kids, carrying a store-bought cake. He looked nervous, shifting on his feet like a boy caught sneaking in late. After the candles were blown out and the plates cleared, he pulled me aside. I need to say something, he muttered. His voice was low, but I could hear the weight behind it. I was angry at you, but I realize now I was angry at myself. I thought I could keep messing up and someone, usually you, would fix it. You renting out that duplex, it forced me to grow up. And I'm sorry. For a long time I stared at him, trying to reconcile the brother who had always lived recklessly with the man standing before me, finally owning his mistakes. My throat tightened. Thank you for saying that, I whispered. It means more than you know. From then on, things slowly shifted. Damon started repaying small debts he owed me, nothing dramatic, just bits here and there, but the gesture mattered. Tasha even thanked me once, saying, I hated you for what you did, but looking back I think it saved us. We stopped waiting for handouts and started figuring things out. Hearing those words felt like a balm on wounds I had carried far too long. The duplex itself became a symbol of my independence. Each month when the rent deposits came through, I didn't just see numbers in my account, I saw validation. Proof that I had made the right choice. Proof that my future wasn't something to be bargained away. I eventually moved into a cozy condo of my own, leaving the duplex entirely as a rental property. It became not just an investment, but a reminder of my courage to stand up for myself. Family gatherings grew warmer again, though they would never return to the blind loyalty of before. And that was a good thing. The boundaries I set became permanent lines, and everyone knew them now. No one suggested I bail Damon out of anything. No one assumed my savings belonged to the family. Instead, conversations turned toward lighter things. Niece's dance recitals, Sunday cookouts, even my own dating life. I no longer felt like the family's safety net. I finally felt like my own person. Looking back, I realized the duplex was never just about bricks and rent checks. It was about rewriting the story of my life. It was about saying no to being the sacrifice and yes to being seen, respected, and valued. It was about forcing my family to confront the imbalance they had created and watching as even Damon, the golden boy, learned to stand on his own. To anyone listening to my story, I hope you take this with you. Saying no is not cruelty. Setting boundaries is not betrayal. Sometimes the bravest, kindest thing you can do for yourself, and even for the people who depend on you, is to stop carrying the weight they should learn to carry themselves. Because when you stop sacrificing everything, you give space for others to grow. And sometimes, that's the only way they'll ever learn. So thank you for listening to my story. Please remember, if this touched you, don't just keep it to yourself. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends so others can find strength in it too. And please, drop a comment below telling me what you learned, what stood out to you, or if you've ever had to set a boundary with someone you love. Your story matters too. Moral lesson. Life has a way of testing us with the people closest to us. Often, it is easier to give in, to silence our own needs so others won't call us selfish. But true love and respect cannot grow where sacrifice is demanded instead of offered. My journey taught me that boundaries are not walls, they are doors. When we draw them, we invite others to meet us on equal ground, instead of allowing them to take without limit. For years, I believed my worth was tied to how much I gave. But worth is not measured in sacrifices. It is measured in courage, dignity, and self-respect. By choosing to protect my future, I gave my family a chance to see me not as their solution, but as a human being deserving of fairness. If you are struggling with guilt over choosing yourself, remember, self-respect is not selfishness. It is survival, it is strength, and it is the first step to healthier relationships. Stand firm in your truth, even if others call it betrayal. In time, they will see the wisdom of your choice. And even if they don't, you will finally be free.